Good evening, everyone. Do a quick bowl tonight. This is some wet wood, as usual. This is a piece of cypress. Had a second name to it. Matt. Couldn't really pronounce it. This was given to me by one of the people at the Turning Club. So I don't know if this, I'm not sure where he would have got a hold of this at to start with. So I did cut it round on the bandsaw. See, it's pretty out of whack in a lot of ways. But I think what I'm going to do, it has some cracks, they're generally on this bottom side. There's some little ones up here on the top side too. So I think I'm going to clean up that face first. Should have got the longer tool rest out. I think what we'll do, we'll clean that up so I can get it spun around in the chuck as quick as I can. Make it a little easier to get things balanced up, I think. We're always spinning things by hand to make sure nothing's going to hit. We're not going to be able to spin this very fast right off the bat, so we could switch to there, be able to see what we're doing back here. Like I say, this is not going to be no high-speed kind of a piece, especially at this point, because didn't do a very good job with the chainsaw, which is not unusual, but so we'll just clean up this face. Some nice, really pretty curls coming off of it, though. Not there yet. Not sure how far down we're gonna have to go on this top. Like I say, there's some cracks. This thing had all kind of branches coming out the side, so I'm not sure this is going to be an outstanding kind of a piece right off the bat, especially seeing how it's wet. And we will grab it with the bigger chuck for in here. I'm not worried about it being a perfect size tenon in there. I get some material out of the road. So the jaws have somewhere to sit. It's interesting. It's even curly enough to The little curly cues are actually going to grab a hold there. So that should give us a nice, pretty flat surface. So that didn't go quite the whole way out there. Some cracks there. I don't think I'm going to worry about any. Maybe take a little bit of that off right there. That's all going to go away anyhow, but it'll sort of make it better if I know where the rim is going to be as to how much more we're going to have to take out to get rid of the defects. Stuff has seems like it has an interesting color palette to it. So we'll see. Doesn't look like it's cutting overly clean in there, but let's see what happens. Blank's actually kind of cut a little bit deep too. Like I say, this was kind of last weekend that I was outside doing some stuff, and I'm like, I need to get this thing cut up because it already had cracks in it from when he gave it to me. So it's like, this thing's going to do nothing more than just crack more yet. So looks like our grain is running in that direction. I think I actually have these, yeah, it's set. These dividers are set for almost a perfect circle. That's why I made sure I didn't go quite down to my line. So now we can go ahead and get this big clunk off the bottom. We definitely have a pretty big variation down here. So that's going to be our first order of business. I'm going to bring a tailstock back up, even though it's in the chuck. It's never a bad idea to stay in the zone of being a little cautious, a little extra safe, because there again, it had some nice cracks down here. And he said this stuff is like sopping wet whenever you cut it. So I have no idea how long he's had it around. This particular guy seems to like to keep stuff around. That was a bark piece. Yeah, I was going to say there was a little chunk of bark on there. And no more. That's good. At least it didn't whack me in the head for a change. Seems like we're pretty close to being round out here. Fairly close. Branches going through it. Definitely want to keep in mind when you're messing with stuff like this that you never turn a piece of this, so probably stop and check things a whole lot more often because we don't know what it's going to do. Besides make a mountain of chips, we know it's going to do that. That's going to go away with the corner. There's a big crack there. I think what we'll do is get out here on this corner, get some more weight off of it, get rid of our corner, and then we should be able to increase the speed a little bit. I think if it survives, I think it'll make kind of a pretty bowl. Doesn't look like it's cutting too bad. A little bit of, it's got huge, you know, these kind of trees got the huge growth rings, so definitely get ready to make some final cuts. We're definitely going to be sharpening a tool and taking our sweet old time because it's probably not going to cut cleanly. I probably should move the belt. Quit trying to go so fast. Another bark inclusion in there. That's some sort of a branch. Another one. There's one there, one there. It looks like it's coming in on an angle, so maybe that one at least will disappear. I'm not sure about the other one. We shall see. Getting closer to being round. Interesting pattern is actually, yeah, there was a branch came right straight through there out the other side. So as long as we get rid of the pith part of those, that's probably going to leave some, might leave some interesting figure in it. Might. Definitely making some chips, but we know we got to get rid of all the junky stuff that we don't want. There's a big crack right here. Still there. I think at the moment, I think we're just going to get the rest of this trued up, so hopefully we can get a little bit more speed out of it, get it more in balance. Feels like we're round. Not quite. Just a little bit left there. Cracks there. Very wet. And I'm not getting sprayed with water, but it is plenty wet. Not gonna let me go any faster, maybe. Probably make this into a calabash style bowl where the top curves back in. That would be an option. It is wet enough. It is spraying water. My face shield just got covered with water. It's probably not a good idea to wipe it either. Didn't smear it too bad. Maybe. Definitely some, that's a pretty area right there. Now what about the bark inclusions? We still have some cracks there. Still a little hint of that one. So we just keep getting rid of what we definitely don't want. And then we'll sort of go from there as to what we're going to end up with. We're going to take this bottom down some more, because that's a substantial crack right there, and that'll do nothing but get bigger. Definitely is not going to let me go very fast. It wants to vibrate. We'll probably have different densities of wood in something like this, or maybe even different moisture contents. So I guess we'll just have to go slow. Should be smart enough to mark that crack before you do that. Looks like we got rid of it. At least I don't see it, put it that way. Part of the out of balance is probably this branch coming through right there. So as I spin it by hand, it wants to sink down, it wants to stop at that point. So that means that's kind of like the heaviest point of it. Go ahead and clean up this down here a little bit. Figure out what we're going to grab it with, which chuck we're going to grab it with. And then the crack's still there, right there it is. Let's be smart enough this time and mark where that's at. Crack's coming down across there. Comes down to about there. That should be, unless we grab with the really, if we grab the really big jaws, then it's going to be in the road. I don't think we need to though. There's our lines. Okay, that looks like that has gotten rid of the crack. That crack. So that should work from there. Let's see what else we can get rid of. Bark inclusion's not getting any bigger. We're definitely getting rid of the pith part there. That one we're not going to get rid of. Same way with those couple cracks up there. Which is kind of a shame. But nice to not having to take more off this top. That's probably going to cause me some trouble down the road. Like I say, I've never worked with this stuff, so who knows what it's going to do as it dries. Does help when you tighten the tool rest up. Is that going to get it all? So it got rid of all the cracks. Let's see, maybe there's crack. Yeah, there they are. Right there it is. So maybe I wouldn't have to go quite that deep even. If I leave the crack in there, it's only going to get bigger as it dries. And I'm not really too concerned about making a smaller bowl out of this. I'm more interested in getting rid of all this stuff that bark inclusions allow it to go the whole way through to the inside as well, would be my guess. Should quit stepping right in front of this because I just got a bath. Plenty wet. So if I go with the same chuck that's in there now, it's certainly a big enough tenant to hold it. I think that's where we'll go. We'll mark that off so we know where we're going to go to. And we know that we can go a little bit beyond that as well. I'm just trying to look at my curve. It certainly isn't cutting overly cleanly in certain places. But at this point, it really doesn't matter a whole lot. We're just kind of exploring. Now we're just trying to, what I'm really after now is looking for the curve, because now we have the top tilted in. It starts curving in about right there, so this curve from here up to there needs to be a little bit nicer. And definitely don't want to be moving the tool rest because things are getting wet, so it's not going to slide very nicely for me. Probably could try and use the 40-degree gouge and see whether that'll cut it cleaner. Like I say, I'm not really too concerned about whether it's cutting it super clean, but like I say, I've never worked with this, so it could actually be starting to dull the tool a little bit too. Could have some silica in it or something. We'll make our tenant. It's a little bit better of a curve. I'll definitely don't want to go down right to the tenon. I want to leave a little bit more material so that we can make that round down there when we get to that point. Kind of stringy too. It wants to sort of go off the end there a little bit. But I think for a wet turn bowl, it's probably pretty much close enough as it is. I think I will go in here and flatten out a little area on this bottom for the tenon. Maybe knock the camera loose, even take a spindle gouge and clean that area up so that we have a good solid grip on it. And maybe we could even be weird enough to see. I can't imagine that this would even remote. That's what I was looking for. Should have been able to see that. It left some places it was sticking up there. That's generally usually the issue with doing any of the softer woods is they will not allow you to do some of the things you would normally do with hardwoods. And being that it's sopping wet doesn't help it any either. So we'll see what the shear scraper will do to that down there. Can at least maybe straighten up the curve a little bit, even though it's not really critical at this point. And that's what I figured it would do. It's going to really tear that up on the end grain. Not a surprise in the least. Kind of what I figured it would do. Sort of fuzzing that up. Probably going to be one of them situations where you're just going to have to say that's going to be as good as we're going to get it at this point. I take the one little slice and cut off of it and see if it'll do a little better. And that worked. That's got most of it a little bit down in there. You can live with that little bit. So we'll just make this curve and get a bath again. Just a slight inward curve at the top. I don't want it to be too much of a curve. Did leave a line in there, but I'm not going to worry with that. Although for whatever reason, that's why it was bouncing. It's not cut the whole way around right there. That's kind of weird. Took care of that line. At that point, I just as well to leave it alone. Should bring up my tailstock to mark that point. Not that it'll really matter down the road, but it does make it a little easier when you go back to remount them later on to have that central location marked. Definitely isn't the best curve I've ever created, but I haven't been doing a whole lot of turning the last couple of weeks, so it's what you call being a little out of practice, I guess. And turning some wood that you have no idea what it's going to do. But it looks like it's cutting relatively clean enough there. So now we can go strictly to the end, see where we're at. I bumped the camera earlier. Can even maybe come down a bit. Not that bit. We weren't supposed to loosen it. There we go. Now we can get some of our inside done. Go back to my swept back gouge. Probably is in the need of a little bit of a touch up. Still not balanced. We're able to get a little bit out of it, so that every little bit counts and make it a little easier. So it's a nice flat face. Get rid of this corner. Tool rest is a smidge high there. Give us some room to work down in there. My gouge is getting dull. And for right now, you go back to the 40 degree, which is sharp on that side. if we marked it. Probably gonna leave this probably about the inch thick, which would be right about where I was at there. So we'll go in and we are going to have to bother this camera again. Gotta move it over away because my tool handles actually was just about ready to hit it before, and I know that would be the next that I'll knock the camera loose, knock it crazy. And we're kind of on a bit of a time schedule tonight. Granddaughter goes to bed here in about a half an hour, so we're gonna need to get this done. Rid of our sharp corner. Grab a set of calipers. Set them so they're little. So we're about the inch mark right there. I just set it a little proud, and as I go in, these you get when you're trying to go back up underneath, you got to be a little bit careful, especially on how deep I go, because that's where you run into trouble. You end up getting a thin spot down low. But we're all right so far. This is the wonders of when you curve. As soon as you curve the rim in a little bit, then you create an issue of the chips don't go away. Still thick enough right there. And I probably will have to go to a bigger gouge too, because I'm going to get into the issue of how much tool overhang I have. Very tempting to stick your fingers in there to knock them chips away, but I would not recommend it. I'll have enough of that away. About ready to run into a big wall of wood. Fingers tell a lot, but when it comes to wet wood, I've learned that fingers don't always tell you enough. I certainly don't have the perfect curve on the inside. I just want it to be more interested in being consistent with the outside. And we are going to have to go to a bigger gouge. The handle's up here. Oh, really? Where did you go? Oh, come on. It's a bad thing of having rubber mats under your feet. When you drop something, they bounce, and then it wants to run away. Imagine that. Gouge is even sharp. And now we'll see if we can see whether the camera, now I'll probably really get in trouble because now I'll go back to a 60-degree gouge. So I got to move the camera one more time. Back it up some more. Maybe move it a little bit more that way. Still gives you a fairly decent view. Let's see if I'm over far enough. Yeah. Could take a couple seconds out here, and I should be able to zoom in a little bit. So if I go to that, and then I should be able to bring things in a bit. Not that it's an overly great kind of a shot, but it's kind of the best I got when it comes to that one. And we got to stop and move chips out of the road. I'm not really worried about the cleanliness of the cut. I'm just more interested in, so we're sort of right on track. I just got to keep an eye on, I don't want to make the bottom thin or much thinner than what the sides are. It can remain a little bit thick or a little bit thinner than the side walls because there's this tenon down there that has to dry as well. Some of this becomes almost like blind faith is what you're doing with the tool, because you almost can't see anything. So there, we're down. That cut actually got me down almost to where I stopped at. So now it's just a matter of rounding the bottom out, making the bottom go around. Not sure what them white streaks could be, some silica in there. They don't really look like cracks. Oh, there's a tiny little crack, but I don't put a whole lot of faith in this surviving the drying, but we shall see. Yeah, we're still, hard part is this last curve. The bottom I would say is probably good, but there's this transition area where it curves around in here is pretty tight on the curve. So maybe you can sort of cheat it and go back to the smaller gouge, smaller nose to make this curve a little bit more what I want it to be. And just take a nice light cut, because it's a lot of overhang on the tool right there. And it sort of feels like it made the curve all right. The measures all right. We can still take and go back to the bigger one to finish out down here in this very bottom area. And that should be it. Still feels like I could take just a little tad out of this area right there. I'll just sort of make that almost a flat bottom right there, because I got to keep in mind that we're going to remove more material on the bottom side then once it becomes dry. Love to know what those streaks are, but didn't seem to knock the edge off the tool when I was out there, so it might not be silica, because if it's silica it'll just flat out knock the edge completely right off. Make sure these edges out here are round, or at least it's not a sharp edge. Because if I leave it out there as a sharp point, that's going to be the first place it dries. And that'll be the first place it cracks. So I think we're going to call that good enough. We'll go back over here. Get all the inside out. We'll see what happens to it. There's still some branches. There's a branch in there, definitely a branch that came through there. White streaks of some sort there. I was thinking I saw a tiny little crack somewhere else. Well, we'll see what it does. I do have, I got a little bit of time, so I cut up, while I was cutting this log up, and just use one of those. I ended up with some little blocks that actually will make a very, very small type of a bowl out of it. A little dish, maybe you call it. So we'll try one of them and we'll just go right to final thickness and see. This will give me a good idea as to what it's going to do as it dries. I clean my chips away there so when I open my drawer I don't have a pile of chips laying in the bottom of the drawer. And as you can see, I didn't cut it very square either. But we can still find, maybe if the ruler was long enough, we could still sort of go corner to corner. We could even make it a square one, but it's not very square. Might possibly could make it interesting to go with it. Normally would drive them in with a hammer, but this sort of line up the face a little bit. Lock the spindle, wiggle it back and forth. That digs the teeth in quicker, easier. See if there's any cutting edge left on this. This is going to be a little piece, so this will definitely go easier and quicker. All I want to do is a little bit of a flat area. Not quite there yet. Just a place to grab a hold of it. Definitely doesn't cut very nicely. Looks like there's hard and soft areas in it. The hard areas are cutting cleanly, the soft areas are just tearing to pieces. So we'll try and be a little nicer to it. Drop the handle a little bit more, which is going to give me sort of a slicing cut coming across there. See whether that did the job. Not really. I think that's going to be the other issue to do it square. Seems like it's pretty chippy out there, and there's also a crack. Crack needs to stay on the bottom. So not quite. And we're going to make this the top. I need a little place right here that's going to be clean, so we know where the top edge is going to be. So not totally cut cleanly there. Cut round, I should say. Gonna make that round. Don't need to go down very far, but it needs to be round, so I know where I'm going when I flip it around. So now we're round all the way around, round all the way around. So you make a nice little simple cut to the center. See if that actually calms that grain down that wants to stand up. Somewhat, not a whole lot. So we'll give us a tenant. Once again, it doesn't need to be giant size or anything like that. It's only a little piece to start with. Go in there, make sure I have enough room for the jaws. And I probably going to use the bigger chuck, but the chuck is as big as what the bowl is, so we'll just use this one and bring the jaws out further than what I should, or what it would be a good scenario. You kind of lose some gripping power when they're only gripping on 8 points, especially on something soft like this, but it should work fine if it grips solidly. We'll slow it down. It did not. So just move it around a little bit. Make sure I'm pushing in the center, which is probably what I didn't do. It's definitely soft. It wants to just keep on digging in. It kind of looks like the best we're going to get out of that for whatever. Probably those areas that wants to fuzz up the grain. We're just going to call that good enough. And our 40-degree gouge is still sharp, I think. So we can flatten out our bottom. small, so we can come in. I still don't have the dry points out of there. I get them out of there because it's going to have a little bit of a foot. And we need a tenant with the right size. That's actually the right size for those. That really looks like that's too small of a foot. So I might have to go to the bigger jaws. So we have 2 marks. We'll figure it out from there. I think that'll look alright. Nice small little foot. Get a little curve back. See how bad we're tearing things up. Not very nice. So, off to the grinder we're going to go. And actually, I don't even think I have the light on over here. This will be a different kind of a grind on there. Yes. That has, I was sharpening some tools for a friend of my uncle's last week. That actually has an 80 grit CBN wheel on it. This is not what I would normally use. Using that because I had to reshape a bunch of the tools that he got. He got them at a public sale. I got a really good deal on them, but they weren't even close to what I would grind them at. So I want to be nice and gentle. Very light pressure. Go around. Sharpen back to an edge. That's the 40-degree one done. Go to the 60-degree. One thing when you go with the the coarse wheel like that. It doesn't, one pass across or two passes across and you are done. Which is kind of a nice thing, I guess, in some ways. So let's see. We know down in there tight, I can't get the 40-degree gouge in there nice and tight. So freshly sharpened, go nice and super slow. Helps you make the nice curve. And very nice little fine shavings off of it. So we'll see when we stop as to whether we now cut it cleaner. Still a little bit wants to stand up. This even has a little bit of spalted in it. That's kind of interesting. It's still, that's still some of the end grain wants to stand up. Unless I didn't cut deep enough. Always a possibility. I got most of it. There's like even some like ripples there. There's still some of it that's standing up, but my guess is as soft as what this is, that's kind of waste of time to keep on messing about with that, because I would assume that as soon as you touch it with just a little bit of sandpaper right there, once it's dry, I think it'll be fine and dandy. Switch over to my spindle gouge. Make this tenon a little bit nicer than what I did. And just a little shear cut. Tool handle's way down in my pocket. And try and see if we can scrape a little bit. It's not enough of a curve yet. Not doing too bad. It's not doing horrible, but it's going to take more sanding than what I would like in there. Gently stroke the edge to get our curve. Stood the grain up quite nicely. The real question would be, what happens if we hit it with a piece of sandpaper? Slow the speed down. Dries it off quickly. Getting dust right away. So yes, that answers that question of it will work. 180 grit sandpaper is what I have in my hand. Get right in there to that edge. I'd like to turn the dust collector on, but I would get yelled at if I did that. So I just live with a little bit of dust. And we might as well do the very bottom while we're at it, I guess. Although, it may not actually be undercut either. Huh, luck of the draw. All I'm going to do is knock the sharp edge off here. A little bit of that there, because I know that Chuck is going to put marks in that there. So I'm not going to get carried away. I was just more curious as to whether it's going to sand. and it sands just fine. Actually took that little bit of stood up grain right out of there, like right now. I guess if I really wanted to, I don't really want to suck a ton of dust. So we'll just do a little bit of each. We're going to call that good enough for the outside. This will be seriously overkill for a chuck for that size of a bowl, but I'm not changing jaws just to do one little itty bitty bowl. These should be set that they're pretty close to a perfect circle in there, so they shouldn't leave huge marks. Shouldn't. So we can go back over to there. No, that's the grinder. There. Since you watch Richard Raffin, he loves the spindle gouge for 3/4 of this work. So it's still in the handle, so we'll just kind of straighten up this edge a little bit. See if what it'll clean up that edge. And get rid of the razor blade. Well, that was not impressive. Not in the least. I literally chewed that to pieces right there. I don't know if that's just because it's wet. See if it'll shear scrape across there and clean that up. That would be like 60 grit sandpaper to try and sand that off. Better, but not great. So I want that to be, I want at least to be relatively clean to start. There, I got it. That got the ticket. Get rid of the corner. So the rest is just a shade low. Use some meat in the middle. These little bowls is one of them you can get away with not really leaving much meat in the middle. We don't want, I think I want to go ultra thin. So leave it about 1/4 of an inch thick, something like that. We might just use our plain old fingers. Feels like we're getting fat pretty quick on the bottom. I'm more interested to see whether it's doing the same thing it did on the outside. But now we know that it's gonna be like a couple seconds worth of work, so we could make one that's really nice, slow. Cut. Let's see what we did. Still places where it's fuzzing it up. Like I say, we found out on the outside that it doesn't. Still getting thicker in there. Still feels like we're thick. Just not quite getting the curve. So we can sort of cheat on that one a little bit too. That was a 1/2 inch bowl gouge. I'm going to go to a 3/8 inch bowl gouge. So it'll make that little radius in there a little bit easier. Less material to remove. Now we got it. Now I should probably make one little cut. Try and make one little cut top to bottom. As long as I stick with the small gouge, we won't have a tendency to push so hard. Push as hard. And we should be able to make one real swoop to the center. We know we're going to leave the tenon on so it can be thinner at the bottom than the balls. A little bit. It actually feels very good. Ooh. Squeak as we go. So that's kind of one little itty bitty bowl. I kind of like doing these little ones. This guy, the guy that gives me the wood, a lot of this stuff goes back to him. He's probably soon going to be blessing me because he gave me some stuff that's some American chestnut a while back. And it was just a matter of, it was just a tree branch really. So I made him a whole bunch of these little itty bitty bowls like this. They were even smaller than this with it. I'm just trying to get the big fuzzies off. That's really all I'm trying to do right now. I'm not really worried about a finish sanding because it is too wet to actually finish it. But we certainly can do a rough sanding to get rid of any of those places that sort of wants to stand up. And as you can see, there's dust coming off. Even though this is wet, it still dries the surface out enough as you sand that it's going to work. A little bit in the bottom yet. It's certainly too wet to put anything on it. I don't know what would happen. That would be another trial thing to do, is to actually sand something like this and put beeswax on it. The beeswax would clog up a lot of the grain. Certainly wouldn't be a shiny finish of any sort. but it would probably allow it to dry, maybe without cracking. If we spin it in reverse, a little bit out here at the rim that's still standing up a little bit. Still has a little bit right there. Because I'm assuming, and probably a good assumption, that this thing is going to be oval in a week from now. So if I don't get some of this sort of rough sanding done now, it'll become very, very difficult at a later date. Because there will be this will be a non-go, you won't go back and cut anything on this. This is strictly will be sanding and done. Let's see what it does with a little bit of 220 on that area. I think we're just going to call that good. Put it in a paper bag. Same way with the other one. This one, when it's separate. I helped with a class a month or so back with Alex Snodgrass, the bandsaw guy, and he said about putting magnets so that you can stick your pencil anywhere. Well, that's fine, except my chuck key is in the same place where them pencils are at. Now they want to grab a hold of that. So we will have a little bit of work to do on the tenon down here, or the foot. Not horrible, but it needs to dry, so that's where we'll leave it at. Go back to there. But make kind of a cute little candy dish. Maybe come next Friday or so on my days off. I do have a microwave that I use for this kind of stuff, so maybe next Friday I'll run this through the microwave. Give it a handful of cycles in there. And then when you do that, especially on something small like this, probably take, I don't run it very long, like 40 seconds at a time, 30 or 40 seconds, and let it cool off, and just keep repeating that for over a couple hour period. And then from there, it's ready to sand and finish usually. They're kind of I think it'll be kind of a nice little bowl. It's got definitely has some color, quite a bit of color variation to it. But other than that, that's going to be it for me. Got to clean up my mess a little bit, but other than that, that's going to be it. So we got two, one's a rough shaped one. Like I say, the little ones this size, I pretty much always do these right to finish. Like I say, the microwave on something that small seems to work quite well. Like I say, it'll take me the best part of the day to get them done to where I want them, because what I'll do is I'll get out the scale, which is in grams, and I'll weigh it, and have a little card or whatever, weigh it, microwave it, let it dry, or let it cool off, because these things will get really hot quickly. I mean, really hot to the touch, put it that way. Let it cool off for like half an hour, something like that. Go back and put it in again and do the same thing until I get the weight to equalize to where you put it in, you take it out, and it doesn't lose any more weight. That's kind of the way I've done quite a few of the real little guys like that. You know, I don't know. These old guys that bring the wood just to the turning club and that, they seem to love these little ones because they have a bunch of, especially the one old guy, he goes to the library all the time, and the old ladies at the library, of course he's 90, so when he says they're old, I don't know that they're as old as he is, but he calls them the older ladies at the library. So they just love these little bowls because they put their paper clips and I don't know what else you would put in, a couple little M&Ms or whatever, and have a field day with it. So other than that, that's going to be a wrap for me. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we will be more on track to be here consistently. Oh, my daughter and family, they got a house, so settlement's in like 45 days. So probably till October I'll be back here on a regular basis on Saturday evenings. That I will not have to watch what time I get done. So till next time, have a good week.